Why would someone
never pay taxes?
Describe such a diverse
They'll never hold a job.
Level of experience,
play baseball, or write a poem,
functionality, gifts,
go out on a date,
strengths and limitations,
use a toilet unassisted,
in such an extreme way.
Regressed because of some environmental exposure into autism.
Creates an environment that allows him to consolidate and create extreme actions around his biases.
These are children who should not be.
Welcome everybody back to the Neurodivergent Connections YouTube channel. We're glad to have you here. There's some big stuff that's sort of come up lately that we want to get to. We want to thank our subscribers. We're up to 500 subscribers, which is awesome. We appreciate your interest and also just appreciate the platform we have to talk about these issues and want to encourage more of that discussion. What do you want us to talk about? What questions do you have for us? How can we expand the dialogues that really serve you and serve the interest of our viewers? So please do that for us. I am Greg Fuqua. I am a late identified autistic guy who is a mental health counselor and focuses on neurodivergent individuals and neurodiverse couples. And I'm proudly joined by my two co-hosts. Mona, would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Mona Kay, and I'm the host of the Neurodiverse Love podcast. And I was in a 30-year marriage. We didn't find out until our 29th year of marriage that we were a neurodiverse couple. And I identify as ADHD, and I also do couples coaching and individual coaching for the non-autistic partners. And I have the Neurodiverse Love conversation cards and workbook. And you guys, the Neurodiverse Love documentary hopefully will be released at the end of this year. So, yay.
Well
and
done.
Greg is one of the people that was interviewed. And there are 4 couples that are interviewed and 2 other coaches and therapists. So, yes, and I'm so excited to be here again.
Thanks, Mona. Scott, please introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Scott Simpson. I'm up in Canada, and I got married despite myself. I stumbled through life, got married, thought that would be the path to everything working out. But my wife got cancer and died, leaving me with a 3-year-old son to raise. My career fell apart. I got an ADHD diagnosis. And then my relationship still kept falling apart. So then I figured out autism, and life has made so much more sense since. That was hard to say. And this weekend, I think I am celebrating. If my math is right, I'm celebrating 7 years with the lady I've been with for 7 years. And it keeps getting better and better thanks to good folks like Mona and Greg here.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, appreciate that introduction. I've also been in a neurodiverse relationship for 30 some years. My wife is an ADHDer. Really appreciate your guys' voices and contributions. One of the things that we've been doing over the course of our channel is sort of, as we're talking, we're sort of defining kind of what our channel is about. And in the recent speeches from the Secretary of Health and Human Services, RFK Jr., helps create a really potent contrast to what sort of voices we want to have around these conversations. And it's not that there isn't value bringing attention to autistics and also more severe presentations of autism and the impacts that has on the people and loved ones around them and society in general. That's okay, but we need to do that with a lot more clarity and balance. And so if you're not familiar with the recent speech, which has created a firestorm of backlash in terms of both fact-checking and also just the nature of the descriptions he created. First off is that he gives no data. He has no peer-reviewed research or data that he presents. This is his opinion and his perspective. And when you have a platform that's as potent and important as a secretary of a department like this, being responsible about what sort of picture you paint around an issue is absolutely critical, and I wouldn't describe this as anything less than completely ignorant and irresponsible. The characterizations of autism become a very narrow and extreme and deficit-oriented view of what it means to be autistic. I will say that I am all for both research and also increased resources and support for autistics and different neurodivergent issues. And the question becomes, did he talk to the most recognized experts in the field, the researchers, broad spectrum of families and individuals who are on the spectrum and their experiences? And I'm not hearing that in what he says. You know, he talks about autistics never being able to have a job.
Autism destroys families. More importantly, it destroys our greatest resource, which are our children.
Never being able to pay taxes.
These are children who should not be suffering like this.
And why that issue has come up is kind of suspect for me. Like, we need these people paying taxes. I just don't get that so much.
We're expensive.
Yeah, right. We're a burden, is basically what we're saying. We're not contributing to society. They'll never play baseball. They'll never write a poem, go on a date, no love, never use a toilet on their own.
Many of them will never use a toilet unassisted.
Why would someone describe such a diverse level of experience, functionality, gifts, strengths, and limitations in such an extreme way, in such a narrow way? And my only conclusion, as somebody who's trained in psychology, is that that gives him the power to do extreme things around it. And it also paints himself as a savior of this very, again, myopic problem. Here is this gigantic and extreme problem, and I am the savior of it. And so this really is reminiscent of also Donald Trump's narratives about immigrants, for instance. If we paint immigrants in the most extreme way, that they're murderers, that they're rapists, that they're criminals, that they all come from insane asylums, are we serving those people? No, we're hurting them. Is that a possibility that that's happening with some immigrants? It sure is, but it's a very narrow. And so to describe it this way is to make yourself important and to consolidate your power around extreme ways of dealing with it. And so the autism registry, which he wants to create, is one of those things. Now, this harkens back to really disgusting times in pre-Nazi Germany. But also, I think a lot of his dialogue harkens back to former ways of understanding autism, which used the R word, which saw autism in a very, again, narrow and deficit-oriented way. And so I think there's a lot of damage that's done toward how we've tried to expand our understanding of neurodivergence and of autism. And he's pulled it back down to this very base level that creates a lot of fear, creates a lot of terror.
This is a preventable disease.
That, again, creates an environment that allows him to consolidate and create extreme actions around his biases.
We know it's an environmental exposure.
An epidemic.
It has to be. Genes do not cause epidemics.
Now,
he's invented a crisis, basically, and then says that I'm the only person who can solve it.
Yes, exactly. So he describes it as an epidemic, and we know the people with the boots on the ground in the field know that a lot of this has been just unidentified in an expansion of our understanding of autism. Autism has been around forever. We can think of Henry Cavendish, Isaac Newton, Einstein, a bunch of people that are documented in history centuries ago that weren't experiencing the same environmental vaccines or conditions or whatever agenda he is bringing to this. And that agenda is an environmental understanding of autism. If we asked RFK Jr., do you want to get rid of autism? I think his answer would be yes. And that scares the crap out of me because, number one, I'm autistic. I cannot extract the autism from me. Who I am is inextricably linked to my autism. In fact, I have a hard time even seeing it because it's so endemically about me and about who I am. And are there environmental aspects? There could be. There could be. So here's my opinion on it. Does it come from vaccines? No. Does it come from microplastics? I don't know. But it seems like to me we definitely know it comes from genetics. I have yet to see an autistic client that doesn't have some remnants of also neurodivergent traits in their family and their parents. And yes, it looks different generation to generation. If I was to venture a guess of what might be, if there is an environmental impact here, it would be an epigenetic stress and trauma, emotional and physical, because we do see autism paired up with seizure conditions, sometimes with blindness, sometimes with other physical disabilities, and we also see it paired up with legacies of trauma. And so if there's an epidemic, it's probably about trauma here. It's probably not about being autistic. But yes, we don't know that. But where do we want the resources being used for autistics? And this is a very touchy subject because we have been dictated to by neurotypicals about what we need and who we are for decades now. And I'm tired of it. Can we please talk to the people it really affects? When I look at all the rights being taken away of transgender people, I wrote my representatives and I asked them, would you be willing to sit down with families and individuals that are transgender to understand their issues, to have that education in order, because you are making laws and policies that directly impact them. Not one of them agreed to. And I kind of wonder, from RFK's position, who have you talked to? Who is leading this?
Yeah.
And who needs to lead this?
I agree with you. I agree with you. And I think one of the things, because I've had several friends ask me my thoughts on this, and thank you so much for starting us out on this conversation, because I think it's really critically important. I have a big following on Instagram, and I posted on my story quite a few things that autistic folks said that I thought really were very, very impactful. And not being autistic, I didn't want to be the voice of autistic folks. So I did that on my story. And I'm glad we're talking about this today, because I think one of the things that he failed to do was to share the different levels, the ASD1, ASD2, ASD3, and what each looks like for the individual, for families, what the supports are and what the supports aren't in our country. And this is just the United States right now. And, I know from all the work that I've done and my own lived experience, if every counselor, every person in the helping profession had been educated about autism, ADHD, and other types of neurodivergence in adults, there would have been so much less emotional harm caused to me, caused to my ex, caused to us as a couple. And I can't imagine how many families and couples and individuals have suffered because of the lack of knowledge and the lack of understanding. And unfortunately, this is just adding to that. where there's an opportunity for education and bridging the gaps and expanding on the whole neurodiversity movement, which has been going on for, it's probably like 25 years now since Judy Singer came out with, her thesis on neurodiversity. We had come so far. And it just so happened before he came out with his speech, I was finishing up the book called In a Different Key. And if you guys have not read it, it's a very long book. I think it's over 600 pages, but it takes you through the history of autism. And after hearing JFK's speech, I literally felt like I was back in 1950.
Yeah.
And it was so scary to me. And I am Jewish, right? So when I read in the book about Hans Asperger's and I read about Nazi Germany and how so many people who were not only disabled and probably would have been diagnosed with autism or ADHD or some other type of neurodivergence, but also the LGBTQ plus community, people who were different than whatever, the norm was for leaders in, Germany and other countries. I have a daughter who's queer. You have a child who's queer. We know that life has not always been comfortable for them, finding out what their sexual identity and sexual preferences were, but also it's not safe. And I'm just afraid, this is my fear, that life for lots of folks who are differently wired in whatever way is getting less safe when I thought we were going in a different direction.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's scary. Yeah.
Oh, Scott, go.
All right. I'm not American.
I know.
Okay. So that may, to some people, lower their value of what I'm about to say, or for some, it may raise it. But here's what I see: this as very complicated, layered, but also very simple. And the parts where it gets layered is where it gets complicated. I have seen in the United States for the past number of years a worrying trend toward enforcement of conformity. That the people who used to have a pretty secure grip on how things were and how things were run were bit by bit losing that to people who were different in some way. They don't like that. And because the differences really speak to opposition to capitalism. And I don't want to get all Marxist about it here. But pretty much all the groups that are targeted for being different have a relationship with capitalism that is a little antagonistic to capitalism. Right now, capitalism is having its moment of wringing out all it can. And part of that is getting rid of things that are different. You have to have conformity in order for capitalism to work. For years, they were able to put our people in prisons, in institutions, in rivers, and dispose of us quietly and without sorrow. No more. Our allies in the gay community stepped up quickly. The left-handed community were vanguards in changing minds and seeing people who were different as still people. Civil rights had a rise in America. And so that's one layer of it. And then where it gets really simple is when it comes to this Bobby fellow. I'm not going to make jokes about the man because he's dangerous, and here's why. I heard a podcast this week from a noted Canadian podcaster named Malcolm Gladwell. He's written some tremendous books.
Love him.
Okay, he's got a podcast called Revisionist History, where he goes back at things that are forgotten or misunderstood. And he wanted to know what is up with Kennedy hating on vaccines. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing because it's fascinating, but Kennedy wrote a book apparently, and people haven't read it for good reason. But these guys did, and they found out Kennedy has two people he hates most in the world. One, Dr. Fauci. Enough said. Two is the guy who developed the I forget the name of the virus, but a vaccine that is saving millions of lives of children who may have otherwise died of diarrhea. It's an antiviral vaccine, and it works, and it's fantastic. The guy who created it is number 2 on the hit list because, and it's not, and the because will blow your mind. You heard of Louis Pasteur? He's the guy who found that like little things get in us and make us sick. Pasteur wasn't the only guy with a theory. There was another theory that said, nuh-uh, when those things get inside you, they don't make you sick if you're healthy. Those things only make you sick if you are unhealthy. The sickness is not from the bacteria, not from the viruses. It's from your body being weakened by something. He thinks Pasteur was a fraud. He thinks germ theory is wrong, and he wants to prove himself right. And the only way he can prove himself right is by making successful vaccines go away, because a success of a vaccine proves germ theory is right, which means he's wrong, and that can't be. So when he's coming at autism, he views us as people who have been made sick by something in our world, not within ourselves, not from an acquired infection of any kind, but because something made us this way. Because he is coming from that perspective, this whole thing about us discovering the source of autism epidemic and the reason for it by September.
Now he's changed. He'll have preliminary information or preliminary research or preliminary data.
To even say that we're going to do this isn't like we're going to invest the half of the GDP of America to get a man to the moon and back safely. This is by the fall, we're going to know what's going on. When they find out the real source, which I'm going to tell you in just a moment after this break, the real source of autistic people is autistic parents.
Really? Does not imagine that.
Yeah. And once they find out that the only reason there are autistic people around is because there are autistic people around, the solution will be to not have autistic people around. He doesn't want to do away with autism. He wants to do away with autistic people. That's why I'm so scared of this. It's terrifying to watch it all unfold. And so far, nothing has been done to stop it. And that's terrifying for me. So I've great sympathy for anybody who is affected by this. And honestly, everyone is affected by this, because we know where picking off the low-hanging fruit of noncompliance starts, with the people who can't fight back. And so hopefully today we can talk a little bit about how to protect ourselves and make us less easy to dispose of quietly and without sorrow.
Again, I want to create a contrast with what we want to talk about and how we create, a more positive, understanding, humanistic dialogue around this. And I'm going to share one quick story as a way for us to move towards that. When I worked at the Des Moines Arts Center, I worked in the outreach program, and one of my favorite classes to teach was adult special needs art class, which we did every week. It was so awesome. I mean, it was stressful, but it was so beautiful. It was so amazing. It was so amazing to see how important personal expression was to these people that could be considered low IQ or whatever you want to throw on them. They were all beautiful. And I had one student that had a lot of physical disabilities and physical contortions. Her arm was all twisted up, and she had to wear braces on her body, and she rarely talked, but every once in a while she would just say something so cutting and so insightful. And I knew that even though she was largely nonverbal, she had an incredible internal world. She was full of emotion, full of intelligence, full of desire. And one day, one of our other students, one of our curricular students, was singing. And yeah, he's singing really bad, but he's singing. So I'm fine with that. And I said something like, "Hey, buddy, you're a really good singer." And this is the first thing I heard her say ever was, "No, he isn't." And I'm like, "All right, you got me on that one." And it was really funny because the guy who was singing was like, I've been found out, you know, I've been found out, she hangs out with me a lot. She kind of knows. And, um, and this girl's name was Gabby, and I loved working with Gabby. Now, my whole goal became to help Gabby make art.
Mm.
And for weeks, I was constructing things to help her hold a drawing or painting utensil, because she didn't have the strength and coordination. But man, I could tell she wanted to. Man, could I tell that. And so before every class, I would try to find something that I could attach to her hand that could help stabilize things, give her enough strength to start making marks. And after several weeks, I was getting upset at the process. And she would drop it, and she would drop it, and she couldn't hold on to it, or it would break, or it would fall. But she knew I was trying. And then one day, I looked at her and I said, "You know what, Gabby? Can we try your right hand?" That was like this. And she didn't respond, but she let me take her right hand out. I put a brush in it, and she started painting. And I could see in her eyes, she was like, "Finally, you effing idiot. I'm right-handed. This isn't a problem. This is what I need to use." And to see her I just poured down tears in that moment, just seeing her find herself. Are we defined by our limitations? Or do we need to look at what are our potentials? What are we overlooking here? And nobody told me anything about Gabby. Nobody told me what her problem was, what the things that she struggled with, that she was actually right-handed. Nobody knew it. It took me in this one art class. And the reason I want to share that is because, again, it's not about our disabilities. It's about our potentials. Do we want to be defined by the things we struggle with most, or the things that keep us back the most? Or do we need to find outlets for our potential? And I think that, and who knows what Gabby's quote unquote IQ was, or, what burden she was or tragedy she was to her family. Come on. And so it takes this moment with, yes, people with my attitude, which is this belief in them and a curiosity in them, and a creativity to work with who they are, that they belong.
And Greg, I mean, thank God you came into Gabby's life, because, how long might that have gone on that she wasn't able to express a gift and a talent she had for art? So, thank God that that happened. And really, thank you for sharing that story. And it just made me think about something that happened early in my career as a social worker. And I started my career in child welfare. And I didn't have my daughter then. I was like 20 something. And I remember one of the cases that I was assigned was a 12-year-old girl who was in an institution. And the institution was primarily for adults, but they did have a juvenile unit. And she was so highly medicated that she was pretty much unable to communicate with me. But I sometimes feel that I'm very empathic, and intuitively I knew that she needed to be off the medication, that she needed a home where she could be supported and loved. And this was in the 80s, okay? And there was nothing I could do really to help her. I could get her out of the institution, and I was able to look at a few group homes, which weren't that great, but I was able to find the group home that I thought, she had a chance of not only thriving, but just surviving in. And now looking back at her and so many other kids that I had an opportunity to work with in the child welfare system, there is no doubt in my mind that she was probably autistic, and her behavior was so out of control for the foster parents. I don't remember how many foster homes she had been in, that they just started medicating her. I mean, just tons of medication, which no 12-year-old should ever be on that much medication. So they can control her. And I don't know if she died. I don't know what happened. I don't know if she had any, opportunity to thrive as an adult. But we have to do a better job of understanding not only differently wired brains, but different ways of showing abilities and gifts and strengths. Because not everybody is going to see the world through the same eyes that you do. And this is a challenge in neurodiverse families and neurodiverse couples when we don't understand that we can have differing perspectives and both be right. How wonderful it would have been if the child welfare system had focused on what she loved to do, what brought her joy, what special gifts she had. And I remember it was probably around the 90s, there was, I can't remember his name, two guys that did some research. And one of the guys said he was in a waiting room of a nonprofit, I think it was a mental health facility. And he asked the girl that was in the waiting room with him what she was there for. And she started listing all the diagnoses she had.
Right.
And he turned to her, and this is when strength-based perspectives were like coming into the nonprofit world, into the mental health arena. It was like the late 80s, 90s. And he said to her, "What do you like to do?" And she goes, "I love to sing. I go to church every Sunday and I sing my heart out." And he goes, "You don't need to be here in this office. You need an agent. You need a singing coach. You need somebody that can work with you and bring that gift or those gifts out of you." And that's, I think, one of the reasons I do the work I do. And maybe, you guys do too, because I saw, like in my ex-husband, tremendous gifts. And I've seen in everybody that I've worked with these tremendous gifts, and they don't see them in themselves because society makes them feel othered because of the things that society focuses on, which is oftentimes the deficits and the things that are expectations from a norm that doesn't exist except in a certain number of people's minds. And I just think maybe the fact that this is happening, Greg and Scott, now will give us an opportunity to bring to the forefront how wonderful diversity can be and how without it, we wouldn't have the world we have. We wouldn't be able to talk to each other on Zoom. We wouldn't have computers without neurodiversity. So, yeah. And I know we're not talking specifically about relationships and neurodiverse relationships today, but, and we're weaving it in, but this is it's a foundational issue. Without us being open to differences in ourselves and in our family and in our partners and in the world, and repeatedly making people feel bad for their differences, people are going to live in fear. And we're going to have more mental health issues. We're going to have more, I'm going to say suicides. We're going to have more folks who have, chronic illnesses that unfortunately will lead to a lot of suffering.
Yeah.
There's people who have been hammering away at people who are different for a long time, and those people have the microphone right now, and they're very, very loud. And Mona, I think you're right that we have come so close to getting across that difference brings improvement, that difference isn't a flaw, it's a feature. that this diversity is not accidental. It's part of why the system works. And America is in a rough spot right now because we have dysfunctional people saying that the people who are different than their flavor of dysfunctional are the problem and need to be stopped. Whatever threat they pose, they're making stuff up. They're lying about us. They're lying about our people. They're lying about what we're like. And I don't know, I'm not saying that they're all lying on purpose. Some are lying on purpose. Some are lying with very dark agendas. There are some who legitimately believe every single thing they're saying. We know the truth from having lived it. And just I'm so saddened by how close America got to breaking through on that. Just even on TikTok, even on, all the places where people are sharing and going, holy crap, me too. And all of the clinics that have popped up with people who are looking at autism in a whole body, whole mind, whole life kind of way, not as there's something wrong with you and we need to train you to be normal.
Yeah.
I worry in this where the money's going to go. Not to get all Marxist about this again, but my sociology teacher taught me that follow the money. Like, who benefits from things being this way instead of how they have been? Who is primed and set up to benefit from wherever he goes with this? And I'm not talking about, and any industries relating to culling the population. I'm talking about who is set up to go, we have a solution and we're already in schools and the insurance companies already have our account informations. I worry the ABA is going to stand up in September beside Mr. Kennedy and go, the fine people here and these fine people from Autism Speaks and ABA are united, and now we are going to make sure that all the autistic kids get put in this program because it'll be state sanctioned. Well, in terms of the private industry getting the money that we're going to send them. Like, what's the end game? None of it looks good. None of it looks good. So all those autistic doctors and scientists and clinicians, podcasters, YouTubers, Marxists, anybody who has something to say about this needs to keep saying it. Say it loud. Say it to your family. Maybe the people that you disconnected from during that fellow's rise to power, you might need to get in touch with them and go, hey, just so you know, he's talking about me. I know we don't get along, but it'd be a shame if something bad happened to me because of this guy. So I just want to stay in touch. Can I stay with you if they come for me? I don't know how we're going. It's dark. It's dark.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I agree with you, Scott. And this is where I've been trying to figure out, okay, what do we do? Is there something that we can do as a collective? And in the collective, I mean all neurodivergent folks and all those who are in their lives and love them. Okay. Because it's not just about autism. That's right now where the start is, in my opinion. And when you look at, and I forget how the poem goes or the saying goes about Nazi Germany, and it's like, when they came for the farmers, I wasn't a farmer, so I didn't speak up. When they came for the laborers, I wasn't a laborer, so I didn't speak up. When they came for, and it goes through 4 or 5 different groups. And then when they came for me, there was nobody left to stand up for me. Okay. Now, that's where, in my opinion, where we are at that beginning place, where they're coming for autistic folks who are nonverbal, autistic folks who he's saying will never pay taxes, will never do all those things he listed, right? Who's going to be the next group? And also the transgender community, right? One of the things that I noticed, because I do have friends and family members who have very different political beliefs than me, and I think for the most part, we're able to have respectful conversations and totally, agree to disagree. But one of the things that I was reading, and this doesn't have to do with autism, but it has to do with history. is that I think she was in the Air Force, the first woman who did something in the Air Force, and she literally was taken off the Air Force website and the amazing work that she did, right? And there are books that are being taken out of the military libraries and public libraries in general. This is much bigger than the issue of autism. And I think as a society, those of us who feel this way need to understand that just because your name isn't attached to the word that they're focusing on today does not mean there's not something about you that is going to be attempted to be discarded or treated as though it could be discarded and we would be living in a much better society. And that's what's so scary to me. So for those of you that are listening still, because we're not talking about neurodiverse relationships, we're talking about relationships, we're talking about families where there are differences in how you think and how you function and how you work, if you do work, and how you can explain to those people who are part of your circle, maybe not part of your tribe, but you're connected to them in some way. You work with them, you go to church with them, you go to temple, you go to synagogue with them, wherever you are, to be able to sit down and have coffee, have tea, have a soda, go for a walk and begin to understand each other and be respectful of each other's different views. What bothers me the most is when the dogma and the belief system is attempted to be pushed down my throat. I'm just telling you, I'm different, and I want you to understand my differences, and I want to understand how we're different so that we can decide if we want to be in each other's lives. And if we don't, that's okay. We may not be compatible, but don't attempt to push me out of society. That's not okay. Ever, ever, ever.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it does go back to, even some of the principles we do talk about with neurodiverse couples and in those direct relationships, which is a curiosity over judgment.
Mhm.
I think it's very easy for us to feel negatively what we don't understand.
Mhm.
And we may do that in a righteous way, as if we have authority over what is right, what is wrong, what is normal, what's acceptable, what is not. And I think that we have to open ourselves up to, again, our differences and diversities and be curious about what's going on for people. When your partner is raging and getting angry, you can say, that's not acceptable. Goodbye. I won't talk to you because you're angry. Okay. It might be interesting to get more curious about where that anger is coming from, how that person was hurt, and what trigger is there, what history is there, what wound is there, and that might be a much more connective and healing way to work with people, you know. And I think I said this. I don't know if I said this last episode, but that we didn't get recorded, but I think we talked a little bit about some of these issues. And it was and something struck me when our ash tree out in front of our yard was taken out because of the emerald ash borer, right? And it's in the Parkway area, and the city's like, we'll replace the tree for you. Here, pick from your trees. But you can't pick maple trees, oak trees, ash trees, or elm trees. And I'm like, why not? Because they've been overplanted, and that monotony and the lack of diversity has created a weakness in the environment. And these all suffer from diseases that we can't control anymore. And we have to just start taking them out, right? And then what struck me is that diversity is strength, is resilience, is flexibility, adaptability, evolution. So maybe we actually need to embrace, our differences and to create some curiosity about it, but also celebrate, encourage. So the attacks on DEI are just eliminating that and actually creating weakness in our environment, in our culture, in our society. We need diverse perspectives, creative voices, different ways of seeing and approaching problems, issues in our world. We desperately need that in a world that is so complicated and so rife with unique and troublesome problems.
Yeah, and I think what is scary on both sides is that when we feel we lose control, right, of our own lives or of the narrative and story we want the world to hear,
Yeah,
that right, then things get challenging, and it happens in families and relationships. I mean, when I say to my partner, I want you to be more emotional like me, I want you to communicate like me,
right,
I'm attempting to control them so that I can have less fear about where the relationship is going, right?
right.
I don't know that it's any different in our society. And
Yeah,
so, at 61, I finally have tons of curiosity. That's why I love being a podcast host. I love asking questions to understand, and I can say we can agree to disagree. Thank you so much for sharing that. We're on different pages. That's okay. But when being on different pages turns to you're not acceptable anymore, whether you're in a relationship or a family or in a society, that's where I am really scared. And I refuse, you guys, I refuse to live the rest of the years and under the current administration in fear. So I am going to look for ways in which I can focus on educating about what is possible for the future. And that's why I think having this conversation is so critically important. Even if you don't agree with kind of the politics of what we're talking about or the political or yeah, you don't agree with the political leaders. Do you agree that there may be an opportunity to reach across the hall, to reach across the bridge and have a sit down conversation or have a texting conversation or have an email conversation from a place of love and real curiosity and an attempt to understand? Now, when it gets vitriolic or it gets there's no way, you're stupid, whatever, and it gets really negative, which it can in relationships too. That's when that pause is absolutely needed. And maybe you take some space from each other for a while. But I hope that this conversation begins to open people up to more understanding rather than running away from a place of fear or getting in people's faces to tell them how wrong they are. That's what
yeah,
I.
If you're still watching this show, odds are you're kind of on side with this, I hope. So be curious, ask questions, use like, what? That's weird as a prompt to go, so let me learn more, instead of that's weird, you're diseased and need to be taken out. Don't go there. Don't go there. You don't have to. Resist it. If you're in a relationship with somebody who lately feels scared, this is probably why. Because to me, there's not much that's more triggering as an autistic man than having somebody misunderstand me.
Mm,
And this isn't just a friend not getting what you meant when you gave them instructions, or a
mhm,
partner who gets frustrated when you don't make the right face at them. This is the people with guns and power to lock you up or send you away not understanding you in public to others, meaning to influence them. It makes it feel very unsafe to know that you're being spoke. It's what I don't, a lot of us don't even like having attention focused on us or being seen. To be seen or pointed out and go, look at that guy. He's one of them.
yeah,
And have the stuff that they're saying about you not be wrong, and you can't communicate back about it. Because
mm.
there's a whole lot of people who got described and don't have a voice to say, no, I'm not.
I think, Scott, what you said that just really resonated in my body, like somatically, was the
Mm,
misunderstanding part.
yeah.
Right. I don't want to be misunderstood, and you're constantly misunderstood because we're always looking for what is wrong with other people. I did it throughout my marriage, and I'm not playing that game anymore. And it's going to bring tears to my eyes. I'm not playing that game anymore. I'm not playing that game with anybody. If I don't understand you, I'm going to ask you questions. If you don't feel comfortable answering those questions, let me know. So my question to RFK, my question to the leaders in our country, in the United States, is, can you help me understand why you believe what it is you said? Like Greg started this episode with, who have you talked to? What is the research you've looked at? Help me understand how you got here. And I know that the Kennedy family had disabilities, people with various disabilities. I know Sergeant Shriver, I think he started the Special Olympics, or he led the Special Olympics. So there's a history of understanding, and there's a history of coming together to support people that are different. So what happened to move in this direction for RFK? I don't know, because I don't know enough about his history and his life, but I would push back and say, who have you talked to? Like how you started, Greg, and give me the data. And if you haven't talked to people across the spectrum, the autism spectrum, then maybe this is an opportunity to do that. And talk to the researchers who've done the research that can help you move forward in a way that will provide more supports, more services, more accommodations throughout the world and in every system that's out there. Because I will tell you right now, and this is going to bring tears to my eyes too, I will tell you right now that everybody I've met, whether they're autistic, ADHD, or call themselves neurotypical, who has been in a love relationship or has been in a family where there's been misunderstanding and estrangement, wishes that they could have had the right support to understand their loved one so they didn't have to suffer so much.
Yep.
And that's where I'm going to end. And I don't know where you guys want to end.
I'll keep it super short. Nothing about us without us.
Yeah.
I don't know where I lifted that from, but it struck me huge when I did see it. Nothing about us without us.
It's from the disability community.
All right.
Yeah.
Go disability community.
Agree with that 100%. Yeah. And I think that part of our relational growth has to start with those questions about looking at ourselves. We can ask questions to others in a safe way, in a curious way, in an open way, which is connective and helpful. But I think we have to look at ourselves. And I think that's what I really respect about you, Mona, is your ability to say, I have regrets about where my motivations were and where my distortions in thinking were and how I perceived my husband and, how I othered him. And that's where it starts. And so if I could say something to RFK Jr., it would be, please look at yourself in the mirror. Please look closely at, why. What is this about? And if there is altruistic, really purely altruistic reasons, then this process is going to look a lot different than in a couple months you've confirmed your bias. And one of the most toxic things in a relationship is power dynamics. I am the authority of you and your rightness or wrongness in the world, right? And I think that that's what's scary about all of this is these big themes really do apply in the microcosm of our individual relationships and in our family relationships. And so I think it's really important to see these connections, to see these broader truths, and to see these broader concepts, and for us to continue to learn from them and to continue to work with the people and our loved ones around us and the people that are different, the people that do struggle. Glad glad to be part of this discussion, and glad for our viewers to be here as part of it too.
We'd love to hear your thoughts. So feel free to reach out either through the YouTube channel or to reach out to, you can reach me, Neurodiverse Love, the number 4, the letter U at gmail.com. And Greg, you want to give
I'm
me?
at gfuqua70@gmail.com.
I don't even know anymore. If you search big ass superstar, you'll find me.
There you go.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.